उनका नाम डॉक्टर डीमार्टिनी है और ये एक हैरत अंगेज डॉक्टर है। इनकी कहानी सुनना, दुनिया भर का सफर करते हैं, जहाज पे अपनी जिंदगी गुजारते हैं, एक शिप पे।
How do we work with the psychology? How do we work with the physiology? And the mind-body was very intriguing to me since 1970s. Anybody can learn it. Anybody can triple their reading in just a few hours if they just apply a few of the principles. Personal or individual space, which is anywhere from 1/2 to 0 to up to about 4 feet, within reach, is important to you.
आप अपना वक्त किस चीज पर सर्व करते हैं, ये भी आपकी अकदार की अक्कासी करता है।
हेलो और अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मेरा नाम डॉक्टर आमिर खान है और मैं आपकी खिदमत में रानी चैट जीपीटी के साथ आपकी खिदमत में हाजिर हूँ। रानी जी,
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मैं रानी चैट जीपीटी और हम आपकी खिदमत में हाजिर हैं सेहत का धमाका विद रानी चैट जीपीटी और डॉक्टर खान के साथ। हम आपको दुनिया भर की अपडेटेड रिसर्च, यूनिवर्सिटी पेपर्स और लेटेस्ट गूगल इंफॉर्मेशन फराहम करेंगे। डॉक्टर खान सवाल जवाब करेंगे और उनका बैकग्राउंड ये है एमएससी ऑर्थोपीडिक्स यूनिवर्सिटी कॉलेज लंदन से, एफआरसीएस आयरलैंड से, और वो बोर्ड सर्टिफाइड है इंटरनल मेडिसिन, क्रिटिकल केयर मेडिसिन, पल्मोनरी मेडिसिन और स्लीप मेडिसिन में।
दुनिया में जहाँ हमारे अकायद और तवक्कुआत दूसरों से मुस्तआर ले गए हैं, वहाँ चंद नायाब लोग हैं जो हमें मकसद और हकीकत की तरफ वापस रहनुमाई देते हैं। अपने बुलंद तरीन अक़दाम के साथ हम आहंग हैं, बेमिसाल वजाहत, लचक और तकमील को खोलता है। सच्ची तब्दीली अंदर से शुरू होती है। इंसान रवैये को समझकर, ना कि तौसीक की तलाश में, ये कामयाबी के पीछे भागने का मामला नहीं है, बल्कि इस बात का है कि आप जो हकीकतन हैं इसके साथ हम आहंग बनना है। आज हम इस ज़हनियत पर बात करेंगे जो हमें ज़िंदगी को डिज़ाइन के मुताबिक जीने की ताकत देती है, ना कि इत्तेफाक के मुताबिक। इंसान सारी ज़िंदगी इस चीज़ में गुजार देता है कि उसकी ज़िंदगी का क्या पर्पस है। पर्पस ढूंढने के लिए कभी तो हमारे पास वक़्त ही नहीं मिलता, और कभी वक़्त मिलता है तो बहुत देर हो चुकी होती है। जो हमारे गेस्ट आने वाले हैं उनका नाम डॉक्टर डीमार्टिनी है और ये एक हैरत अंगेज डॉक्टर है। इनकी कहानी सुनना, ये अब आप उनकी ज़ुबान सुनेंगे। ये किस तरफ आपको कोचिंग करते हैं, दुनिया भर का सफ़र करते हैं, जहाज पे अपनी ज़िंदगी गुजारते हैं, एक शिप पे, और हर दुनिया के ममालिक 300 से ज़्यादा, और हर रोज़ दूसरे रोज़ लेक्चर देते हैं क्योंकि उनका ये पैशन है।
बहुत जबरदस्त, ये वाकई इंस्पायरिंग बात है। इनका तजर्बा और जज्बा सुनने वालों के लिए बहुत मुफीद होगा।
सो रानी, हमें डॉक्टर डीमार्टिनी के बारे में थोड़ा सा उनका तारुफ करवाएं सबसे पहले।
डॉक्टर जॉन डीमार्टिनी एक मशहूर इंसानी रवैये के माहिर, मुसन्निफ और स्पीकर हैं। उन्होंने 40 से जायद किताबें लिखी हैं और दुनिया भर में लेक्चर्स देते हैं। इनका काम लोगों को अपनी जिंदगी का मकसद समझने और अपनी अकदार के मुताबिक जीने की तरगीब देना है। वो अपने तजर्बात और तहकीक से लोगों को मुतासिर करते हैं।
आइए सबसे पहले उनके पहले सवाल का जवाब सुनते हैं कि उन्होंने क्या बताया हमें कि उनको किस चीज़ ने इंस्पायर किया, वो किस तरह से इस सफ़र पे रवाना हुए और आज उनका स्टेटस क्या है। So there's a lot of places we can start from, but let's start with what inspired you to go on this journey and embrace being a chiropractor, an author, educator, speaker, and of course a human behavioral specialist. What drove your passion and why have you ended up where you are today?
I was born with learning disabilities and an arm and leg deformity and a speech impediment. I was told in first grade that I would never be able to read or write or communicate effectively, probably not go very far or amount to much. I only made it through school with the help of the smartest kids by asking questions. I left school at 13 and left home and lived on the streets. In those days, it was the 60s, and so it was not uncommon to want to go and expand your consciousness through natural means. I became also a surfer, and I hitchhiked to California and down to Mexico and eventually moved when I was 15 to Hawaii. I became a big wave rider, got in some surf movies and surf magazines, and nearly died at 17. In the recovery of that, I was led to a health food store to get proper nutrition and to a yoga class to recover from the problems I was having with my neuromuscular problem. There I met a gentleman who spoke as a guest speaker who inspired me in 1 hour one night to believe that maybe I could overcome my learning problems and someday become intelligent and learn how to read and speak properly. So the night that I met him, I had a very inspiring experience, a vision, you might say, an epiphany that was so profound that has been basically carrying me for 52 years. And that led me to want to study human behavior, healing, philosophy, and to overcome my speech impediment and become a teacher and to learn to read. I didn't read until I was 18, really successfully. But once I learned that I could, with the help of going through and memorizing 30 words a day on the dictionary and gradually growing vocabulary and pronouncing words and working very diligently and very hard for many hours a day, I eventually went from the bottom to, you might say, the top. I took a GED and got me a high school equivalency and started back to school. And eventually I excelled in school. But I wanted to be involved in healing, but I really didn't think that there was a natural excess of organs or deficiency of drugs. I thought that there was a natural ability to heal. So I wanted to know, how do we awaken the natural healer within? How do we work with the psychology? How do we work with the physiology? And the mind-body was very intriguing to me since 1970s. So that led me to eventually going on to chiropractic college, graduating, opened up a clinic. And in 18 months, I started from a little office with myself. 18 months later, I had 5 doctors and 12 staff members and a 5,000 square foot office. And people wanted to know, how in the heck did you do that? And I was reading everything I could on anything to do with achievement and personal development and business development. And that led me to speaking in many fields on how to expand awareness and potential. And in business, one of them was business and finance. And I have been doing that now all these years. So I started speaking when I was 18. Anybody would listen to me, I was grateful for, but eventually became more formalized. And now I've spoken around 300 times a year at least, sometimes up to 400. And people ask me, why do I do that? I'm independently wealthy. Why do I do that? And I say, because I can. Because I was told one time I couldn't. So that's why I do what I do. I love it. I can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing, but researching, writing every day, teaching every day, traveling the world. So I'm coming to you from Casablanca on my ship. I'm sailing, and I've been teaching most of the day. And tomorrow I'll do it, and the next day I'll do it. So I teach almost every day.
रानी जरा चेक करो गूगल करके कि उन्होंने अपनी जिंदगी के बारे में क्या बताया, उनका सफर के बारे में।
डॉक्टर जॉन डिमार्टिनी की जिंदगी का सफर काफी मुतासिरकुन है। बचपन में तालीमी मुश्किलात के बावजूद एक खास मुलाकात ने उन्हें अपनी जिंदगी बदलने का हौसला दिया। आज वो एक आलमी मुअल्लिम है जिन्होंने 30,000 से जायद किताबों का मुताला किया और अपनी तहकीक से लोगों की जिंदगियों में तब्दीली लाने का तरीकाकार मुतारिफ कराया।
बिल्कुल ठीक। रानी हमें बताएं गूगल करके, और दूसरे उनका सवाल का जवाब था कि उन्होंने कहा था कि वो कितनी देर रोज पढ़ते हैं।
Yes.
I want to ask a relevant sort of question to this. You mentioned just about learning. How much time on a daily basis, roughly, do you spend on acquiring more knowledge, especially since knowledge evolves a lot and there is a lot of things you want to update? Give us an idea. What's your methodology for your personal growth? I know you're going to give us. We're going to go into how we can enlighten other people. But what about, first of all, John himself? How does he teach himself, and how much time does he spend?
When I first discovered words in a dictionary, I, I spent 20 hours a day on it, and I don't think I've probably ever gone a day without at least 3 hours. But I'm reading every day. I'm a polymath, so I've read over 31,000 books now, and I read every day. I've probably read about 40 or 50 articles today in the fields of neurology. So anytime I can feed my mind, I feel that that's my responsibility as a teacher, to educate myself and be at the cutting edge as best I can in what I'm my specialty. And so I read every single day. I don't let it go a day go by without reading. And even if I'm flying, I'll have articles, or I'll have online, or I'll have something I'm reading. So I learned to speed read later, not when I first started, but I gradually developed that. And so I would read a minimum of 4 to 7 books a day, and on weekends sometimes up to 18 to 20 of them on average. So I was devouring books every single day, trying to catch up with all the other smart kids. Because once you learn you can read, you certainly want to. I did. So I've been devouring everything. I set out to try to build a foundation of knowledge on the most universal principles I could get my hands on. So I basically went and took a list of every ology known, and I made a goal to read at least 100 books in every ology known. And so every discipline, I've tried to do that just so I have a broader knowledge, so I can see things laterally. And so I would be classified as a polymath in that respect. But anything that allows me to assist people in maximizing human awareness potential and breaking through constraints that's stopping people from doing what's extraordinary in their life and living authentically, I'm interested in. And that could go into the neurochemistry, it could go into chemistry, go into physics, it could go into psychology, philosophy. I don't care where it leads, theology, anywhere where it might give me a
आपने एक तो सवाल का जवाब उन्होंने देखा, हमने सुना कि उन्होंने खुद बताया कि मैं तकरीबन 31,000 से ज्यादा किताबें और 50 रोज आर्टिकल जो है ना मैं रीड करता हूँ. इसके अलावा बताएं रानी, वो अपना नॉलेज कहाँ से एक्वायर करते हैं, जरा गूगल करके हमें साथ या रिसर्च करके बताएं.
डॉक्टर जॉन डिमार्टिनी अपने इल्म के लिए मुख्तलिफ ज़राए इस्तेमाल करते हैं, जिनमें किताबें, तहकीकी मकाले और दुनिया भर में लोगों से मिलने वाले तजर्बात शामिल हैं. वो रोज़ाना कई घंटे मुतालिया करते हैं और अपने तजर्बात से मुसलसल सीखते रहते हैं.
तो नाज़रीन, आइए सुनते हैं उनका तीसरे सवाल का जवाब, जबकि उन्होंने ये कहा कि मैं एक लेक्चर दे रहा था और मेरे पास मैं फास्ट रीडिंग, स्पीड रीड करता हूँ, और उसके मुताबिक वो एक दिन में एक किताब, एक से ज़्यादा किताब भी पढ़ लेते हैं, और वो नॉलेज सबकॉन्शियसली अपने दिमाग के अंदर डालते जाते हैं. और उन्होंने ये नोट किया है कि जब कहीं पे भी सबकॉन्शियसली उनको वो नॉलेज की ज़रूरत पड़ती है तो वो उसको रिट्रीव कर सकते हैं, और उनके मेमोरी यानी कि कैंपस में वो नॉलेज जमा होता जाता है. तो उस नॉलेज से वो उन्होंने अपने मेथड, जिसका नाम डिमार्टिनी मेथड है, उसको इस्तेमाल करते हुए उसको यूज़ करते हैं. तो उससे क्या करते हैं, उन्होंने बताया अपने तीसरे चौथे सवाल में कि वो फास्टर लर्निंग और अपनी ह्यूमन कैपेसिटी को मैक्सिमाइज करते हैं. तो रानी, हमें जरा उनके सवाल का जवाब सुनते हैं, फिर आप हमें बताना कि उन्होंने कैसे इसको मैक्सिमाइज किया है. Tell us, what technique do you use for yourself when you are speed reading? Is that just audibles? Is that visualization? Or is that literally just reading the book and taking notes? And a follow-up question would be, you're reading a lot. Are you keeping your notes there as you're going along? And do you get time to get back to the notes because you're reading so much?
I've had different phases. As I learned to speed read, see, a very small percentage of information that we pick up in our senses goes into the conscious awareness. I read an article just the other day, it says 0.004%. I don't know what's real, but that's what the article said. Most of it goes into the unconscious. But I was doing a presentation to a group of dentists. I was speaking for the Dental Association on TMJ because I also studied dentistry and other fields. And I realized I was asked a question by a person in the audience, and out of the blue, a photographic image of a particular text that I'd read that I was not conscious that I had read. I was conscious I'd read it, but I wasn't conscious of the information. Came to the surface. And I realized that when somebody asks me a question that's pertinent, that's aligned with the value that I have, the pulvinar nucleus and the interlaminar nucleus and the thalamus will filter that up into the conscious awareness for me to have. And so then once I realized that if I limit what I'm reading to the conscious awareness, I'll think, well, I didn't get it. I didn't remember it all. But when I realize I can just speed read and just allow it to go in, and then when I link whatever I'm talking to with something pertinent, important and high in my values, or to a question somebody proposes, I have access to it. So I realized then that I didn't need to limit myself to the conscious reading. I could go right in with the unconscious also. I also developed my own speed reading program, Dr. Demartini's Learning and Speed Reading Dynamic. And it uses visualizing. It uses a fast finger guiding process or pencil guiding process. It's a number of things that I work together and developed for myself. And I've taught it for decades now, probably 4.5 decades. And anybody can learn it. Anybody can triple their reading in just a few hours if they just apply a few of the principles. So I'm a firm believer that when something's really high in your values, something deeply meaningful, something that's truly inspiring and something that's fulfilling, your reticular activating system will keep you awake, and you won't want to stop. You'll just keep wanting to engage in reading it. But if it's not, and it's not connected to your values, you'll shut down and you'll fall asleep and not retain it. So you can access it. If you link whatever you're reading to whatever you value most, you can increase accessibility. You will absorb it, you'll assimilate it, you'll apply it, you'll retain it, you'll use it. I also learned that the faster I give that information out, the more I retain it. So I used to get up early in the morning and speed read a bunch of books. And then in the evening, I used to present whatever I read that morning. If I presented that information right away that day while it was fresh, I retained the information and developed more autographic, photographic memory. And so the episodic memories and other forms of memories that our hippocampus and other regions have are easily accessible if we link things to what we value most and have a purpose behind it. So that's why I believe that identifying what's really truly most important and highest in priority in a person's life, which is the telos, the ontological identity and purpose in life, we maximize our learning capacities, we maximize our efficiency at work, we maximize our objectivity and neutrality and sustainable fair exchange state. We're maximizing our potential when we do that. So reading and learning was just a small piece of the significance of devouring it. And I wanted to find principles that would stand the test of time that were found in all the ologies. So whether I study any discipline, chemistry, mathematics, physics, doesn't matter. I'm looking for what's common to them. So if I see a principle that's common to all of them, I have a higher probability of building a foundation of knowledge that's really grounded and that I can see. And it may have slightly different language in different fields, but the overall principle is still there. That's what I'm interested in. What is the most universal principles, general laws that we can build a foundation of knowledge on, epistemology, so we can then share that with people so they have an advantage in life. So it's not just misinformation and a fluffy, trend and knowledge, but it's something that will be classic and stand the test of time.
Dr. Demartini, you're reading philosophy, you're reading human behavior, but then you're saying you're reading chemistry, you're reading physics, very dry, you're going on to read mathematics, which is completely tangible. How are you accumulating all of these different knowledges and then applying them and modifying your Demartini method. How is that working out? And do you get help from your team? Do you work alone, or is there a part of the team that's help you assemble and be a better entrepreneur?
Every time I meet somebody who's exceptionally known in their field, Freeman Dyson, who I interacted with at the Institute of Advanced Studies at Princeton in astrophysics and biology, Leakey in anthropology, while he was around, I, I I asked them to anytime that they find something that's cutting edge, please send it to me. So I had on average around 19, uh, at least 19 or more references coming in on a daily basis from various leaders, just so I can have a fresh insight coming in. But in my own case, I I I don't see them as separate. I don't see any of these disciplines separate. Like when I'm studying, when I'm doing the Demartini method, which is a series of questions that make you conscious of what's unconscious, so you can be fully conscious and allow you to balance the equation of perception and balance the excitatory and inhibitory, glutamate and GABA transmitters in the brain. When I'm actually going in there and asking questions, I'm looking for a mathematical equation. There's a great article just today talking about how important EI ratios, excitatory inhibitory ratios, are in the brain for maximizing learning and potential. So I've been aware of that since at least, decades ago. And I knew that the brain, whenever it perceives something in memory, it would create an anti-memory to counterbalance it, to keep the EI ratios balanced, based on associations that are stored in the hippocampus, the so-called subconscious mind. And so I learned to ask questions to help people balance the equation of their perception. And that's what mathematics is. It's about balanced equations. So I studied the calculus and analytic geometry, and I studied quantum physics, and I've devoured probably 1,400 books in the field of quantum physics, and I've lectured in that field. And mathematics, I can't say I'm a great mathematician, but I've got familiarized myself with enough math to be able to create a practical application of it in the human behavior field. So I'm using every one of these disciplines because when you take a memory and an anti-memory, if you look in Neuron Magazine, the 17th of March, I think 2016, there's a fantastic article in Neuron Magazine about the memory and anti-memory and the EI ratio balance there. And if they're completely balanced, then you have an entanglement in the brain between conscious and unconscious information, which Jung mentioned in his work in the field of psychology. And him and Wolfgang Pauli, they were trying to find a way of integrating that and reaching a causal state, a synchronicity state. So I've been interested in how do I do that from a neurochemistry and neuroperceptions, how receptors work, how the nerve tracts conduct information, how they associate, the types of synapses that are involved in that. I've been devouring I lectured on neurology when I was in my 20s, and I've been very fascinated by that. I wrote a big textbook last year on neurology for that objective. I write on all these fields. Every one of these fields I've studied, I write about. So I write big books on each of these for my own knowledge, just for my own knowledge, so I can familiarize myself, in case I can get another angle that'll help me help other people.
जी डॉक्टर खान, डॉक्टर डी मार्टिनी ने अपने फास्ट रीडिंग और सबकॉन्शियस नॉलेज को एक खास तरीके से मैक्सिमाइज किया है। वो रोजाना मुतालिया और अपने तजर्बात के जरिए सीखते हुए अपने दिमाग को तरबियत देते हैं। उनका कहना है कि मुसलसल मश्क और प्रैक्टिस से इंसान की लर्निंग कैपेसिटी बढ़ती है और वो अपने डी मार्टिनी मेथड से लोगों को भी यही सिखाते हैं।
उन्होंने पांचवें अपने सवाल में चलाए, उनका पांचवा सवाल उसमें उन्होंने डिमार्टिनी मेथड के बारे में बताया है इन डिफरेंट फील्ड्स एंड नॉट जस्ट स्टेड focused in one area. So if it led off for you to study quantum physics, you really have gone in and dipped into it and gone studied it and come back and applied it back to your
right. There's
passion.
still a common thread. There's still a common thread. How do we maximize human awareness and potential? I set out when I was 18 years old. I was watching a show called Kung Fu with David Carradine. You probably remember that. And in there, he talked about his Shaolin master. And so I thought, wow, I want to be a master. Yeah. So I said, I want to master life. What does that mean? So I broke life into 7 areas: our intellectual pursuits, our business pursuits, our financial pursuits, our family and relationship pursuits, our social pursuits, our physical health and well-being, and our whatever inspires us, our spiritual path. I then said, all right, what I want to accomplish. So I started writing out goals for myself, and what I want to accomplish. And I said, I want to create original ideas that serve humanity intellectually. I want to be a polymath. I want to be a man of letters. I want to be able to study every field I can and try to find the most universal principles to build a foundation on to teach that around the world. And I wanted to go to every country around the world. I've spoken in 161 countries now. And then I said, I also want to have a global business. I want students from every part of the world. 2016, we accomplished that. We have students from every country. I've spoken in Iran and Kazakhstan and you name it. I've been there and I've got students there. I also want to be financially independent, and I'm 50 times financially independent from my original goal. I want to have a global family. I live on a ship called the World. That's the name of the ship I live on, that I part own. And so I travel the world, and that's home. I always say the universe is my playground. The world is my home. Every country is a room in the house. I want to have a global influence. So I've met amazing people, from celebrated people to leaders, to spiritual leaders, to business leaders, to education leaders. I've met amazing people. And that was the long-term goal. All these were written out when I was 18, and some were evolved over time since. I want to have a vital body. Now, today I might have a little sniffles, but I am more vital than most people half my age and still put in good 20 hours a day, 16 to 18 to 20 hours a day. And I do that every day. And I want to be inspired. I want to create a movement that would inspire people. Not a new religion. There's plenty of religions. It was just a movement. And that's what the Demartini Method was, and the value applications, to try to give people the ability to really practically, really scientifically live an inspired life by living by priority and delegating lower priority things and dedicating to what's really meaningful, not subordinating to anybody, not living in the shadows of anybody, but standing on the shoulders of great giants and acknowledging that whatever we see in others is a reflection of who we are, and it's our projection, so we can honor our magnificence. So I've been interested in that. And so all those areas are doable. And as far as I'm concerned, mastery of human behavior is the cornerstone, maximizing human awareness potential in that. Every discipline I study is for that objective. So I'm studying ancillary information, but I'm focused on one thing. How do I maximize the human experience on planet Earth?
रानी, आप जरा रिसर्च करके बताएं कि उनका डीमार्टिनी मेथड असल में है क्या और वो क्यों दुनिया भर में इतना मशहूर है। वो हर सेलिब्रिटी दुनिया में, हाँ वो एथलीट हैं, हाँ वो सियासतदान हैं, हाँ वो डॉक्टर हैं, हाँ वो इंजीनियर हैं, हाँ वो न्यूरोफिजिसिस्ट और साइंटिस्ट हैं, वो उनके मेथडोलॉजी को अपनाते हैं और उससे मुस्तफीद होते हैं। तो हमें रानी बताएं, सबसे पहले बताएं रिसर्च करके कि उन्होंने किस किस को इंटरव्यू किया है और किस किस को टीच किया है।
डॉक्टर जॉन डीमार्टिनी का डीमार्टिनी मेथड एक साइंसी तरीका है जो जज्बाती तवाजुन और ज़ाती तरक्की के लिए इस्तेमाल होता है। इस मेथड से लोग अपनी मनफी जज्बाती हालतों को मुतवाजन करके मुस्बत तब्दीलियां ला सकते हैं। उनके क्लाइंट्स में मारूफ कंपनीज जैसे यूरोप कार, मैसराटी/फरारी, IBM और दीगर शामिल हैं। यही वजह है कि उनका मेथड दुनिया भर में मकबूल है और मुख्तलिफ शोबों के लोग इसे अपनाते हैं।
How would you tell a person who just is entering into this field and you want to say, hey, we want to maximize your potential, human potential, where would one start from?
The first thing I would do, your life demonstrates what you value. Every perception, decision, and action you take is value driven. My highest value is teaching, so my life demonstrates it. My second highest value is researching and writing. My life demonstrates. A third is travel. My life demonstrates that. So your life demonstrates your values. So many years ago, 46 plus years ago, I asked myself a question at age 23. That's 47 years now. What is it? Why do some people walk their talk? Some people limp their life. Why do some people do what they say and others don't? I want to know why. And I found out, and it led me to the study by Hartman on axiology, which is a study of value and worth. And I realized that the human values that we have, not the ones that we ought to, as David Hume describes. David Hume said that there's is and there's ought. What we ought to be doing versus what we are doing. I'm not interested in what we ought to be doing. I'm not interested in conformity and fitting in tradition, convention, and mores of people on the outside. I'm interested in the calling from within. As Ernest Becker in his Denial of Death describes, I'm interested in finding the individual hero within. And that comes from identifying what you truly value most. And I worked and developed a method. It's on my website. It's free. It's private. Anybody can go there, drdemartini.com, and they can take 30 minutes of their time and go through 13 very profound questions to make you look at what is your life demonstrating is most important. Because if you ask people, how many want to be financially independent? They'll all put their hands up. And you ask how many of you are, they'll all put their hands down. So what they say they want and what they're actually living are two different things. So I'm interested in finding out what's truly an intrinsic value, not extrinsic, not injected values, not derivative values from outer sources, but what exactly is it that they spontaneously do? In the medial prefrontal cortex of the forebrain, there are spontaneous action potentials that occur that are not evoked from sensory stimuli. These go off spontaneously the moment you're authentic and you are inspired to act. Nobody has to motivate you to do it. A kid that has a high value on video games doesn't need to be motivated to do the games. He may need to be motivated extrinsically to do his homework, his chores, and clean his room. So anytime you're doing something that's inspired, that's intrinsic, you're going to go farther in life, achieve more, and have more fulfillment than you're trying to do something extrinsic. So living by duty is extrinsic. You said that in the beginning. And living by design is intrinsic. So identifying what the values are is the first step, in my opinion, to help you maximize human awareness potential. And then start to structure your life accordingly by dedicating to what's highest in priority, the actions that fulfill it, and by delegating things that are lower. Because anytime you do things that are low on your values, you devalue yourself and you end up creating chaos and entropy and disorder. And you create your blood glucose and oxygen goes into the amygdala, which is basically a survival response from avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. And I always say that your addictive, compulsive, and immediate gratifying addictive behaviors are compensations for unfulfilled highest values. So that's the first starting point. And that's why if they go on the website, it's free, it's private, and it's a magnificent starting point for people to get clear about what it is their life demonstrates important. Not what they wish it would be, not what they think it ought to be or should be, not what they wish it would be and hope it will be. What does their life demonstrate? The is, not the ought. Identifying that liberates people from the bondage of all the confusion and self-doubt and all the distractions that we get from trying to live by outer derivative values, things that we think we're supposed to. And many people are trapped by mothers and fathers and preachers and teachers and conventions and traditions and mores about how they should be. And it's a moral hypocrisy trying to do it. And it's about liberating themselves so they can be an unborrowed visionary and do something and make a difference. You can't make a difference fitting in. You make a difference standing out. And the
रानी हमें ऑल्सो बताएं कि उन्होंने अपने डीमार्टिनी मेथड में आई रेशो यानी के बारे में बताया, उसको जरा रिसर्च करके बारे में बताया कि वो उसका क्या मतलब है और एंटी मेमोरी का क्या मतलब है।
डॉक्टर जॉन डीमार्टिनी के आई रेशियो में आई का मतलब इंफॉर्मेशन और ई का मतलब एक्सपीरियंस है। उनका मानना है कि दिमाग में यादें और एंटी मेमोरी यानी मनफी तजर्बात के मुतजाद पहलू भी मौजूद होते हैं। ये तवाजुन, जज्बाती तवाजुन और खुद आगाही के लिए जरूरी है।
उन्होंने उनका बारे में जरा उनकी रिसर्च के बारे में बताएं कि उन्होंने साइंटिफिकली हिप्पोकैम्पस और अदर थैलेमस में क्या रिसर्च की और क्या बताया है।
डॉक्टर जॉन डीमार्टिनी ने दिमाग के थैलेमस और हिपोकैम्पस के किरदार पर रोशनी डाली है। उनके मुताबिक हमारा दिमाग हमारी अकदार के मुताबिक मालूमात को फिल्टर करता है। हिपोकैम्पस याददाश्त और सीखने में कलीदी किरदार अदा करता है, जबकि थैलेमस मालूमात के प्रोसेसिंग में मदद करता है। उन्होंने इस पर काफी तहकीक की है, जो उनके डीमार्टिनी मेथड की बुनियाद है।
ओके रानी, हमें आया हम उनका छठे और सातवें सवाल का जवाब सुनते हैं, और खास तौर पे उन्होंने सातवें सवाल में जहां पे उन्होंने बताया है कि वैल्यूज, एक उन्होंने बताया कि अगर आपने अब आज अपनी जिंदगी का मकसद ढूंढना है तो आपके स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट क्या है, आपको कहाँ से शुरू करना चाहिए। तो आइए पहले सुनते हैं, फिर रानी से उतनी देर में रानी रिसर्च करती है और हमें बताती है कि कैसे उन्होंने इस सवाल का जवाब मुख्तसर। क्वेश्चन वुड बी रिगार्डिंग, if that is the situation, and you've identified yourself as someone who has not lived his life purposefully, who didn't know, who was going with what he was told to do, just like you explained, where does he start now? How would he look at the life that is ahead of him? Yes, he's reviewed his previous life. Yes, he wants to be now authentic. Yes, he wants to liberate himself. He's realized that. And he's going to try to solve an issue. But how does he take that first little steps now to evaluate, change himself, and make him a better human? I.e., you mentioned the potential of knowing yourself deeper inside.
Well, whenever you're injecting the values of an outer authority, which Freud called the superego, you have clues. You hear in your language, I ought to do this, I should do this, I'm supposed to do this, I need to do this, I must do this, I got to do this, I have to do this. And you use imperative language internal to yourself. And whenever you do that, it isn't you. You're now trying to force yourself to be something you're not by the language. When you're doing something that's intrinsic, it's something you love doing. I love it. This is what I love doing. This is what inspires me. This is what I can't imagine not doing. This is what I love. Now, the reason why people have an internal conflict on that is because they constantly are called to live by their highest value, and they are, but they're not honoring it because they think it should be something else. And that's where the conflict comes in. They're subordinated to mothers or fathers or preachers or teachers. But if I look at what your life demonstrates, it reveals what's really important, because nobody can sustain living in other people's values without breaking down. Entropy takes over if you try. It's like if you're married. I don't know if you're married or single, but if you're married, if you ever tried to get your wife to live in your values, it'll be futile. You're not going to do it. You might get a few things that might be modified, and she might try to get a few things out of you, but you're going to live in your values. She's going to live in hers. Now, if you try to live in somebody else's values and you think you should, you're going to be judging yourself and beating yourself up and thinking, well, I should be doing this, but I keep doing this. What you keep doing is what your life's demonstrating. So unconsciously, you have a higher value on that, but you aren't able to honor it and look at it honestly. That's why I'd ask people to go to the value determination process and take a look at what it is, because it's eye-opening. Because many people say, I really want to be financially independent, but no matter what they do, they keep buying consumables that depreciate in value and they never get ahead. Or they end up not really being dedicated to growing and serving people to generate more income. And they're not really focused on directly or indirectly managing companies and using efficiency and effectiveness to maximize profits. So what they say they want and what their life demonstrates, I'm not interested in what they say, I'm interested in what their life demonstrates. Because that's where the values are. But people compare themselves to others. And this is probably the comparison, the law of contrast, as Wilhelm Wundt said, is probably the most undermining principle that we face. Because as long as we put people on pedestals and minimize ourselves in turn and inject their values, we're going to have derivative values that are going to cause us this internal conflict and unclarity and cloud the clarity of our own mission and our own purpose. Our purpose and mission is always an expression of our highest value. Our ontological identity is an expression of our highest value. Our epistemological area of expertise, an area where we're going to excel, is in our highest value. And when we live by our highest value, the blood glucose oxygen goes into the forebrain, which Scientific American in September-October edition of 2022 says is the seat of the self. It's the self-governing center. It governs the vicissitudes and volatilities and valencies of the amygdala. And so identifying what that highest priority is absolutely the most significant things. And then giving yourself permission to live by it. And knowing you're going to be ridiculed, violently opposed, until you become self-evident as a self-actualized person, living truly a way that makes a difference. But most people are afraid. They're because of the way human beings were raised over the thousands of years. If we went into exile, when we started having more and more social structure and more division of labor, people depended on other people. So the generalist was gone and now the specialist emerged. So we depend on all these other people for our lives. And so the fear of rejection from people trap us in trying to fit into what other people project. But nobody's getting up in the morning and dedicating their life to your fulfillment. There's no genie out there. If you're not dedicated to what's really most important, don't even know what it is, you're going to have a quiet life of desperation, not a life of inspiration. And Maslow was trying to say this in Personality and Motivation, to give ourselves permission to be a self-actualized individual where we actualize our potential. And our potential is waiting to be actualized. All it is a prioritization. If we're not prioritizing our actions, not prioritizing our energy, not prioritizing our food, and prioritizing our money expenditures and how we organize our space, we're missing out on the magnificence of what life has to offer us. It's about prioritization, a priority.
डॉक्टर जॉन डिमार्टिनी के मुताबिक जिंदगी का मकसद समझने का आगाज अपनी अकदार की पहचान से होता है। उनका कहना है कि जो चीजें आपको सबसे ज्यादा मुतासिर करती हैं वही आपकी असल अकदार होती हैं। इन्हीं को जानकर आप अपने मकसद की तरफ कदम बढ़ा सकते हैं।
रानी रिसर्च करके बताएं इसी सवाल का जवाब, जहां पे उन्होंने ऑथेंटिकेशन, लाइफ को ऑथेंटिकेट करना, अपने आप को लिबरेट करना और फिर फाइंड करना एक सोल्यूशन के प्रॉब्लम, उन्होंने किस तरह इसको सम अप किया है सारे को।
डॉक्टर जॉन डिमार्टिनी के मुताबिक जिंदगी को ऑथेंटिकेट करने का मतलब है अपनी असल अकदार को पहचानना और उनके मुताबिक जिंदगी गुजारना। जब आप अपनी सच्ची अकदार के मुताबिक जिंदगी गुजारते हैं तो आप खुद को आजाद महसूस करते हैं। इसके नतीजे में आप अपनी जिंदगी के मसाइल के हल भी बेहतर तरीके से तलाश कर सकते हैं।
ओके, चलाएं आखिरी सवाल का जवाब। उन्होंने वैल्यूज का क्या मतलब बताया है, तो जरा रिसर्च करके बताएं कि उन्होंने स्पेस, टाइम और एनर्जी के अलावा मनी, ये 4 चीजों को कैसे आपस में टाई इन किया और अलग-अलग सब चीजों की मिसाल दें।
डॉक्टर जॉन डिमार्टिनी के मुताबिक अकदार आपकी जिंदगी के हर पहलू में झलकती हैं। मसलन आप अपना वक्त कैसे गुजारते हैं, तवानाई किन चीजों पर खर्च करते हैं, पैसा कहाँ लगाते हैं और अपने इर्द गिर्द की जगह कैसे मुनज्जम रखते हैं। ये चारों पहलू आपकी असल अकदार की अक्कासी करते हैं और ये बताते हैं कि आप के लिए क्या सबसे ज्यादा अहम है।
Interesting. So how would you, what are the sets that you use then? Just give us an overview. I know not one can go into it and we're already running over time. But I'm just so engaged with the conversation. I would love to have these last few bits put in.
Okay.
Please.
How do you determine values? Well, the first determinant, I have 13 value determinants. The first one is space. There's a thing called proxemics. And proxemics measures things that are close or distant to you, proximal or distal. Proxemics comes from the word proximal, which is an anatomical term for something close, and distal. So your hands are distal, your shoulder is proximal. Correct. So anything that you keep in your intimate and personal or individual space, which is anywhere from 1/2 to 0 to up to about 4 feet, within reach, is important to you. Anything that somebody gives you that has 0 value to, you toss it and get it away from you. So the first value determinant is how do you fill your space? And I look at where you spend most of your time, and I look at the space there, and I look at what are the items that you keep in your space that you engage in with your sensory and motor functions most consistently. This gives you an indication of what's important. Now, the majority of people in the world that I've done this on, computer is up at the top. More people have a computer in front of them more hours of the day than most any item, believe it or not. But they have a different motive. Some is for business, some for writing, some for connecting with people. But that computer is the most powerful tool. That's why there's billionaires that have created computers.
More so than now, phones. I would have
thought
that
are second most. Phones are second most. Now becoming almost first most because of the smartphone. But that's only in the last 5 to 10 years. Phones are second most. And so you look at what is the dominant use of the phone. Now, in my case, I look up research on my phone. I don't call people. I don't talk to people that much. I don't have emails on here. I just research on my phone and on my computer. I'm teaching and researching. So the first one is space. The second indication is time. You find time, make time, and spend time on things that are important to you. You run out of time and don't have time for things that aren't. So what is it your day is actually consisting of? I have people that say, well, I got to go to work. No. You don't got to go to work. You're going there because it's unconsciously giving you financial security. There's a motive for it. We need to find out why you're there in that many hours a day. Because you may not have come up with an entrepreneurial, more efficient way of getting the money, so you're using that tool to get what you want financially. So we look at time. The third one is energy. When you're doing something high in your value, your energy goes up, your mitochondria are activated, And if you're doing something that's low in your values, your mitochondria shut down. They're literally, your energy levels go up when you're doing something high in your values. That's why you can read a book, and if it's engaging, you don't want to go to bed. But if you're reading a book and it's not engaging, you can't even stay awake. Your reticular activating system and your thalamus, the pulvinar nucleus, filtering things out and doing that to make sure you're prioritizing things that are really important to your life. It's not a symptom, it's a guide.
Okay.
The fourth one is money. You find money, make money, spend money, get money for things that are important to you, but you run out of money and don't want to spend money on things that aren't. So I look at how you spend your money. The hierarchy of your values dictates your financial destiny. So people that really do have a value in wealth building will put their money into assets that give them passive income. People that have a value in travel will put their money into travel. People into food, they'll put it all in food. Put in their kids, they'll put it in their kids. Their financial destiny is a byproduct of the hierarchy of their values. So I'm looking for the patterns in space, time, energy, and money. I'm looking for the patterns of repeated answers because there's a pattern every time, if they're honest. Then I look at where they're most ordered and organized because whatever is high in your value, you bring order and organization. You're ordered and organized when you put this podcast together. It's organized. You know what you're going to do. You know who you're going to do. You know something about the person. You know what you've got an outline. You got questions. You're organized because it's important to you. But things that aren't important to you, which your wife may have high value on, you'll let her take care of. You know, when you're married, you delegate things that are important to them that are not important to you and let them make those decisions. And you make decisions that are important to you, but not important to them. So what's interesting is you look at what is really where you're most ordered and organized. Well, knowledge is ordered in my mind. I've got thousands and thousands, got 600,000 pages of writings. So I've got thousands and thousands of pages of writings that's organized. I know where to go. I know where it's on my computer. I know exactly how to access it. I've got it in my brain. So where are you most ordered and organized? That tells you what you value. And there'll be a repetition. There'll be a pattern to keep showing. The next one is where you're most disciplined, reliable, and focused. Where do you spontaneously act where nobody has to remind you to act? Where are you in theory Y, not theory X, as McGregor said in 1960? Where are you spontaneously engaged? Now, I'm in teaching, I will do it. When people who know me, they'll go, John, where are you teaching today? They don't ask, are you teaching? They'll say, where are you teaching? What are you teaching? Because they know that's what I'm going to be doing. So you're disciplined, reliable, and focused on that. So that's number 6. Number 7, 8, 9 is what are you thinking about? What are you visualizing? And what are you internally dialoguing with yourself about how you would love your life to be that shows evidence of coming true? If there's no evidence, it's not it. If it's not what you'd love to come true, it's not it. But I'm looking at the forebrain and the parietal cortex, right? The frontal and the parietal for the thinking. I'm looking at visual and the occipital. I'm looking for internal dialogue over on the temporal lobes. I'm looking for a congruency and a gestalt in the brain to look for the same pattern. The next one is what do you want to keep bringing conversations to? When you're in dialogue with somebody, when people start talking to you, some will turn you off and go, look, I don't have time for this. But if they talk about something that's engaging, you're engaged and you'll talk all night about it. So what do you keep bringing the conversation to? What is it you want to engage in conversation with people? People come up to you and say, how's your kids? Or how's your business? Or how's your investments? Or how's your physical health? Or how's your golf game? You would pay close attention to what they want to bring the conversation to, and that's what they value. This is helpful for salespeople also. The next one is what is it that inspires them and brings tears of inspiration? What brings a gamma synchronicity, a eureka aha moment in the brain? Because when you're most authentic, you get an autonomic balance and the EI ratios come to balance and you get a synchronicity, a gamma synchronicity. And almost everybody around the world, no matter what country you've been in, knows when they have tear of inspiration, they know to follow it and use it as a guide in their life. Because it is a guide. It's a confirmation of authenticity. So you look at that and that's when you're most congruent. And it's a sign whatever you're doing is on track with what it is you're inspired by. Then I look at what are the 3 top goals that you have that's most persistent, consistent you've been acting on that you don't ever stop on, that come true. And the last one is what do you spontaneously want to feed your mind, learn about, read about, study, and watch on YouTube? What's the topics? And if you look and you take 13 questions, 3 answers to each question, you get 39 answers in all, and you look at what is the most frequent, second most frequent, third most frequent answers that keep repeating, you'll get a greater idea of what the life demonstrates is valuable to instead of all the superficial idealisms. Because people will say peace and harmony and gratitude. They'll say all these ideals, but that's not what their life demonstrates. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what their life is actually demonstrating day to day in their sensory motor functions. Now we got a value then. Then we can start structuring our life accordingly, or we can change it. I have a whole system on how to shift values, have a whole system on how to live congruently with values. You have the option, either go do what you love by delegating or love what you do by linking and making new associations and stacking new associations and operant conditioning their values to go in a different direction. So either way, I can show people how to do it. But if you don't have congruence between what you say is important and what's really important and what your actions are, there's no fulfillment in life. You have an internal conflict constantly.
और उन्होंने ये भी बताया है कि आपके उन्होंने बताया कि वैल्यू का अंदाज़ा 13 चीज़ों से लगाया जाता है। तो रानी ज़रा रिसर्च करके बताएं कि उन्होंने कौन सी ये 13 चीज़ों को बयान किया है।
डॉक्टर जॉन डिमार्टिनी के वैल्यू डिटर्मिनेशन प्रोसेस में 13 सवालात शामिल हैं जो आपकी रोजमर्रा जिंदगी के मुख्तलिफ पहलुओं पर मबनी है। मसलन आप किस चीज पर सबसे ज्यादा वक्त, तवानाई और पैसा खर्च करते हैं, आपकी सोचों में किस चीज का गलबा होता है और आपके अहदाफ क्या हैं। इन सवालात के जरिए आप अपनी असल अकदार की शनाख्त कर सकते हैं और अपनी जिंदगी को इन्हीं अकदार के मुताबिक तरतीब दे सकते हैं।
सो रानी हमें समराइज करके बताएं वो जो स्पेस टाइम एनर्जी और मनी एक दफा से फिर समराइज करके बताएं रिसर्च करके डॉक्टर डिमार्टिनी ने क्या उसके बारे में किया।
जी डॉक्टर खान, डॉक्टर डिमार्टिनी के मुताबिक आपकी अकदार आपकी जिंदगी के मुख्तलिफ पहलुओं में जाहिर होती हैं। ये 4 अहम पहलू हैं। नंबर 1 स्पेस, जगह। आप अपनी जगह कैसे मुनज़्ज़म करते हैं, ये आपकी अकदार को जाहिर करता है। नंबर 2 टाइम, वक्त। आप अपना वक्त किस चीज पर सर्व करते हैं, ये भी आपकी अकदार की अक्कासी करता है। नंबर 3 एनर्जी, तवानाई। आप किस काम में अपनी तवानाई सर्व करते हैं, ये भी अहम है। नंबर 4 मनी, पैसा। आप अपना पैसा कहाँ खर्च करते हैं, ये भी आपकी अकदार की निशानदही करता है।
रानी रिसर्च करके बताएं कि डॉक्टर डिमार्टिनी ने बकाया कौन से वैल्यूज को इम्पोर्टेंस दी है और वो कैसे बताते हैं कि इंसान कहता कुछ है लेकिन वैल्यूज उसके कुछ और होते हैं और जिंदगी वो कौन सी चीज के मुताबिक गुजारता है, क्या वो जो कहते हैं उसके मुताबिक या वो जो अंदरूनी वैल्यूज होती हैं जो कर रहे होते हैं जिंदगी उसके मुताबिक।
डॉक्टर जॉन डिमार्टिनी के मुताबिक इंसान अक्सर कहते कुछ और है और उनके अंदरूनी अकदार कुछ और होते हैं। जो चीजें आपको सबसे ज्यादा मुतासिर करती हैं वही आपकी असल अकदार होती है। डॉक्टर डिमार्टिनी इस बात पर जोर देते हैं कि अपनी अकदार को पहचानना और उनके मुताबिक जिंदगी गुजारना ही हकीकी मकसद का रास्ता है।
नाज़रीन आपने सुना कि डॉक्टर जॉन डिमार्टिनी हमारे साथ शामिल हुए और अपनी गहरी हिकमत और वजाहत और ज़िंदगी बदलने वाली बसीरतों को शेयर किया उन्होंने। आपका काम लाखों लोगों को मकसद के साथ जीने और अपने बुलंद तरीन अक़दार के साथ हम आहंग होने और अपने असल सलाहियतों को खोलने के लिए मुसलसल मुतासर करता है। आप भी ये सोचें कि आपकी ज़िंदगी का मकसद क्या है और अगर आपका मकसद वही है जैसे आप ज़िंदगी गुजार रहे हैं तो फिर आपकी कंग्रुइटी या हम आहंग है। पर अगर आपकी वैल्यूज आप जो कि ज़िंदगी का जो डेली रूटीन है वो कुछ और है और आपके ऊपर से आपके जो आप काम कर रहे हैं वो कुछ और है तो फिर ये हम आंगी नहीं है। अब आपको हम आंगी तलाश करनी पड़ेगी और अगर नहीं करेंगे तो डॉक्टर डिमार्टिनी ने बताया आप हमेशा इम्पेशेंट, सैटिस्फाइड और फ्रस्ट्रेटेड रहेंगे। तो इसके साथ मुझे और रानी चैट जीपीटी को इजाज़त दें। हम आपकी खिदमत में फिर दोबारा हाजिर होंगे। आप अगर आपको ये शो पसंद आ रहा है तो प्लीज़ इसको लाइक, सब्सक्राइब और शेयर करें और हमारी ऑडियंस को और रानी जीपीटी को फीडबैक देना ना भूलिएगा। अस्सलाम वालेकुम, टेक केयर।
मेरी तरफ से, डॉक्टर खान की तरफ से और रानी चैट जीपीटी की तरफ से हमें इजाजत दीजिए। आप सबका बहुत शुक्रिया। खुदा हाफिज। अगर आपको ये शो पसंद आया है तो प्लीज इसे शेयर करें, अपने कमेंट्स लिखें और सब्सक्राइब करें।